So we're going to start this test, just by preparing 10 rock samples. So those rock samples are basically random rock pieces. The requirement is, that those rock pieces have to weigh, just between 40 to 60 grams. So where I'm going to measure one of these samples, I have 40.2 grams, just for this particular sample. So the sample is within the range between 40 and 50 grams. We have to have, this 10 rock pieces for this experiment, and the weight, just of all those 10 pieces, has to be between 450 to 550 grams. So the idea of this particular test is that we're going to measure first, just the weight, just of our prepared samples. The weighted sample is 48.7 grams. One thing which we want to make sure before we start this experiment is that our samples all fall, just with relatively random shape, just of chunks of rocks. We want to make sure, just that we're going to grind off the sharp edges of those samples, because samples with sharp edges have a tendency to break off, just those edges during the test. So it means, just that they would deteriorate during the test much faster than the samples, just which have, just rounded off edges. So the prepared samples which I have here in this drum were oven dried before this test. So there's no moisture in those samples. So what we're going to do now is we're going to weight those 10 samples with the drum. Then I'm going to give you the weight of the drum alone, and basically the difference, just between, just the drum with the samples and the weight of the drum is going to give you the weight, just of oven dried samples before the experiment. So I'm going to weight, just those samples with the drum. So I'm going to put, just the lid on the top. Those screws. And we're going to record the weight of the samples with the drum, which is 1,781.6 grams. So in the next step, I'm going to weight the empty drum. So the weight of this drum is 1,236.3 grams, and the difference in weights between the drum with the samples and the empty drum is going to give us the weight of the oven dried samples before the experiment. So in the next step, we're going to place the drum with the samples into a trough filled with water. We have prepared just 2 drums before the experiment that we're going to fill the trough with water, more or less 20 millimeters below the axis of the rotating drum. Now we're going to start rotating our drums with our samples. and we're going to rotate those drums for 10 minutes. So the samples are submerged in water. The rotation is going to be around 200 RPM. So I'm going to start this experiment. I'm going to turn on the stopwatch. And you see those two drums rotating. If you watch closely, you're going to notice that we're using two different types of rocks. In one, we have igneous rock, which is kimberlite. In this particular case, we're using weak sandstone. And you can see right away the difference between those two samples. If you look on this side here, where we have sandstone, you're going to see that the water is becoming murky. So this means that we're getting pieces of rock coming off during the test. Whereas if you look at those samples where we have igneous rock, those samples are not deteriorating as fast as the sedimentary sandstone in this particular case. So we're going to run this experiment for 10 minutes. Rotation of the drums, and then I'm going to pull out drums with the samples from the water trough. So you can see one more time how murky the water became when we were using the weak sandstone. And you can see the difference in water color when I pull out the samples with igneous rock. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to oven dry those samples. So we're going to oven dry those samples for over 24 hours. We're going to turn on our oven. And we're going to set up the temperature to 110 degrees Celsius. We're going to place both drums inside. And after 24 hours, we're going to come back here. We're going to pull out those samples. We want to make sure that we're going to cool the oven before pulling them out from the oven, because they may be very hot. Then we're going to weight the drum with the oven dried samples. And we're going to record this measurement. And the next step is going to be, we're going to calculate Slake-Durability Index.